Thaddeus Sinclair walked into the elite New York school like he owned the place. His tall frame and confident stride turned heads, and his friends quickly gathered around him, laughing and joking. They hung on his every word, eager to be part of his inner circle. Thaddeus thrived on their admiration. The thrill of being popular filled him with a sense of power, a feeling he craved. As he made his way through the bustling cafeteria, he scanned the room for someone to entertain his friends. His gaze landed on Amara Fields. She stood behind the coffee counter, her hair pulled back, focused on serving drinks to the long line of students. Amara was different from the others. She worked hard, balancing her job with her studies. Thaddeus had seen her before, always buried in her books or dashing between classes, but today, he felt a spark of mischief. "Hey, look at the coffee girl," Thaddeus called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Do you need a barista degree to make that coffee, or is it a side hustle for your medical career?" Laughter erupted from his friends, echoing in the cafeteria like a wave. They joined in, their jokes flying at Amara like arrows. She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise, and for a moment, Thaddeus felt a twinge of satisfaction, but then he saw it, the hurt in her eyes. It caught him off guard, a flicker of something he hadn't expected. Amara turned away, her shoulders slumping, as she retreated to the back of the counter, leaving a silence that lingered like a dark cloud. Thaddeus felt a knot form in his stomach. The laughter around him faded as he watched her go. Was it worth it, he wondered? The thrill of making a joke at someone else's expense left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had always been the center of attention, but now he felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him. "Come on, Thaddeus, lighten up," one of his friends nudged him playfully. It was just a joke. But it was more than just a joke. Thaddeus felt a conflict simmering inside him. He had always been the king of the social scene, but was his status really worth the pain he could cause others? He had never cared much about those outside his circle, yet something about Amara's reaction stayed with him. As he sat down with his friends, he couldn't shake the unease. The laughter faded into the background, and his thoughts drifted back to Amara. Who was she, really? Why did her hurt matter to him? He had never considered the lives of those who served him coffee or cleaned up after him. "Thaddeus, are you even listening?" his friend asked, waving a hand in front of his face. Yeah, he replied absent-mindedly, trying to mask the turmoil within him. The conversation continued, but Thaddeus found it hard to engage. Instead, he kept picturing Amara's face, her disappointment, the way her smile vanished. It made him question his choices, his friendships, and the person he had become. In the days that followed, the image of Amara haunted him. He overheard snippets of conversations about her struggles, her determination to succeed despite the odds against her. She wasn't just a coffee girl, she was a hardworking student with dreams, and he had mocked her. "Thaddeus, did you hear about her family?" he overheard one student say. "They're really struggling to make ends meet." A pang of guilt shot through him at that moment, deeper than any thrill of popularity. He felt compelled to know more about Amara, to understand the life she led. Who was this girl he had mocked, and why did he care? As he wrestled with these questions, Thaddeus realized that perhaps his arrogance was just a facade, a way to hide his own insecurities. The laughter of his friends felt hollow, and the world around him seemed less vibrant. What was the point of it all if it only led to hurting others? Thaddeus found himself at a crossroads, one he never expected to face. Would he continue down the path of arrogance, or would he dare to confront the pain he had caused? The journey ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Amara had awakened something within him that he could no longer ignore. Thaddeus Sinclair walked through the halls of the elite New York school, his mind racing with thoughts of the cruel joke he had made earlier. He leaned against a wall, staring out at the bustling students. He had always felt the weight of his family's expectations on his shoulders. They wanted him to be the best, to uphold their prestigious image. But now, he began to wonder if his confidence was just a mask. As he watched his friends chat and laugh, he felt a twinge of unease. They were all so focused on their own social standings, but he couldn't shake the image of Amara Fields retreating after he made fun of her job. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What's wrong with me?" he muttered under his breath. Just then, he overheard a pair of classmates talking nearby. "Did you hear about Amara? She's working 2 jobs just to help her family," one said, shaking her head. "It's so unfair. I can't believe she has to struggle like that." Thaddeus felt a sudden pang of guilt. Amara had always been quiet, but he had never thought about her life outside of school. He leaned in slightly, trying to catch more of their conversation. "I heard her family is really struggling. They might lose their apartment," the other girl added. His heart sank. Thaddeus had grown up with everything handed to him on a silver platter. He thought about his own life, filled with tutors, private lessons, and extravagant parties. But what did it matter if it didn't make him happy? Was he really better off than Amara? As he stood there, a flash of memory shot through his mind. He saw a younger version of himself standing in the living room of his family's grand house. He could hear his father's booming voice. "Thaddeus, you must not fail. You have a legacy to uphold." The pressure had always been there, pushing him to be the best. But now, he felt like he was just a puppet, dancing to someone else's tune. "Thaddeus," a friend called, snapping him back to reality. "Come on, we're heading to the gym." He hesitated, glancing back at Amara's empty spot in the cafeteria. "Yeah, I'll be there in a minute," he replied, forcing a smile. But his mind was elsewhere, drifting back to the conversation he had overheard. Later that day, he found himself wandering the library, searching for a book to distract him. Instead, he stumbled upon a small group studying at a table. Among them was Amara, her brow furrowed in concentration as she scribbled notes. She looked determined, her eyes filled with purpose. Thaddeus hesitated at the door, watching her. He remembered how she had balanced her tray of coffee, serving others while trying to keep up with her studies. He had treated her poorly, and now he felt ashamed. "Hey, Amara," he called out, his voice softer than usual. She looked up, surprise crossing her face. "Can I sit?" She frowned, clearly unsure. Sure," she said cautiously. He took a seat across from her, the table cluttered with books and papers. "I heard about your family," he began, searching for the right words. "I didn't know things were so tough for you." Amara's expression hardened. "Why do you care, Thaddeus? You made fun of me earlier," she replied, her tone sharp. "I know, and I'm sorry," he said quickly, feeling the weight of her gaze. "I didn't mean it. I was just trying to be funny, and I didn't think about what it would do to you." "Right," she said, crossing her arms. "And why should I believe you now?" He took a deep breath, trying to show her his sincerity. "Because I want to understand. I want to know what you're going through," he said earnestly. "I don't want to be that person anymore." Amara studied him for a moment, her expression softening slightly. "It's not easy, you know," she said quietly. "I work hard to keep my grades up and help my family. Sometimes it feels like it's all on my shoulders." "I can't imagine," Thaddeus replied, feeling a strange connection forming. "But I want to help. I really do." The tension in the air shifted, and for the first time, Thaddeus saw Amara not just as a target for his jokes, but as a person with dreams and struggles. He realized that his arrogance had only blinded him to the true richness of life, the connections he had ignored in pursuit of status and approval. As they sat together, a new understanding began to unfold between them, one that would challenge everything Thaddeus thought he knew about himself and the world around him. Thaddeus Sinclair stood at the edge of the school courtyard, his heart pounding with a mix of guilt and determination. He had spent the last few days replaying the moment he made the cruel joke about Amara Fields in his mind. The laughter of his friends still echoed in his ears, but it was the hurt in her eyes that haunted him the most. He knew he had to make things right. After school, Thaddeus spotted Amara sitting alone in the cafeteria, her head buried in a textbook as she sipped her coffee. Taking a deep breath, he approached her table. "Hey, Amara," he said, trying to sound casual but feeling anything but. She looked up, her expression cold and guarded. "What do you want, Thaddeus?" "I wanted to talk to you about what happened the other day," he began, his voice faltering. "I'm really sorry for what I said. It was thoughtless." Amara narrowed her eyes, skepticism flickering across her face. "You think saying sorry makes everything okay? You don't know anything about me." Thaddeus felt a wave of frustration mixed with sadness wash over him. "I know I messed up, but maybe we could start over. I want to understand." She set her coffee down and leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Understand what? The lives of people like me? Is that what you really want? Or is it just about saving your own image?" He could feel her anger and hurt, and it struck him hard. "No, it's not about that. I've been thinking about my life, about how I treat people. I've taken everything for granted." Amara scoffed softly, shaking her head. "You think you can just walk in here and act like you care? It's going to take more than a few words to change that." Thaddeus lowered his gaze, feeling the weight of her words. "You're right. I can't just say I care. I need to show it. I want to help." Amara paused, her expression softening slightly, but she remained cautious. "Help how? You're used to getting what you want without lifting a finger." Thaddeus hesitated, searching for the right words. "I don't want to be that person anymore. I want to do something real. I heard about your family's financial issues. I want to organize a fundraiser to help." The surprise on Amara's face was evident, but she quickly masked it with skepticism. "A fundraiser? You think that will fix everything? Just throwing money at a problem doesn't solve it." "I know it won't fix everything," Thaddeus admitted, his voice earnest. "But it's a start. I want to help you and your family, and I want to show you that I'm serious." Amara studied him, her expression unreadable. "And what do you get out of this? Some kind of redemption for being a jerk?" Thaddeus felt the sting of her words, but he didn't back down. "Yes, I want to make up for my mistakes, but more than that, I want to be a better person. I don't want to be defined by my privilege anymore." "Why would I trust you?" she asked, her voice softening but still guarded. "Because I'm trying to change," he replied. "I won't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I want to prove it to you. It starts with this fundraiser." After a long silence, Amara finally spoke. "Fine, if you really want to help, we can talk about it, but don't think this means I trust you." Thaddeus nodded, relief flooding through him. "That's okay, I'll work for it." As they began to discuss ideas for the fundraiser, Thaddeus felt a flicker of hope. This was the first step toward redemption, and he knew it would not be easy. But he was ready to face the challenges ahead, determined to step out of his insulated world and into Amara's reality. Thaddeus Sinclair stood at the entrance of the school gym, a place that now buzzed with excitement and chatter. He had decided it was time to take a bold step. The idea of a fundraiser for Amara's family had sparked in his mind, and he felt a rush of determination. He knew he had to use his influence to make a difference. "Hey, Thaddeus, what's going on?" one of his friends called out, breaking his concentration. The group of boys, always surrounding him like loyal dogs, had noticed his unusual energy. "I'm organizing a fundraiser for Amara," Thaddeus said, trying to sound nonchalant. He watched as the laughter faded from their faces, replaced by confusion. "Amara? The girl who serves coffee?" another friend asked, raising an eyebrow. "Why would you want to help her?" "Because she needs it," Thaddeus replied, his voice firmer than he felt. "Her family is struggling. We can help them." His friends exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Thaddeus could feel their skepticism. "Are you serious? You, the king of the school, helping some nobody?" One of them scoffed. "Yeah, I'm serious. I want to do this." Thaddeus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their judgment, but he pushed through, determined to prove them wrong. Later that week, the fundraiser was in full swing. The gym was decorated with colorful banners, and tables were set up, filled with items for auction. Thaddeus had rallied support from teachers, parents, and even some of his classmates. As he surveyed the room, he felt a mix of pride and nervousness. "Thaddeus, you really did it," Amara said, her eyes wide as she took in the scene. Thaddeus had invited her to see the fundraiser, but he wasn't sure how she would react. "I just wanted to help," he replied, trying to read her expression. "I know things have been tough for you." Amara shifted her weight, still unsure. "Why are you really doing this? You don't owe me anything." "I owe you an apology," Thaddeus admitted, his voice low. "And I want to make things right." The sincerity in his tone caught her off guard. As the event progressed, Thaddeus took to the stage. He cleared his throat, feeling the eyes of the crowd on him. "Thank you all for coming. I want to talk about something important today." The chatter in the room quieted, and he could see Amara watching him closely. "I've made mistakes, and I hurt someone who didn't deserve it," he continued, his heart pounding. "Amara has shown me what real strength looks like. I'm here to support her and her family because they deserve it." The room erupted in mixed reactions. Some clapped, while others whispered among themselves. Amara's expression softened, but she still held back. "You really mean that?" she asked quietly when he stepped off the stage. "You're not just doing this for show?" "Not at all," Thaddeus replied earnestly. "I want to help you, Amara. I want to be better." As the night went on, he watched as Amara slowly let her guard down. She began to engage with him, sharing stories about her dreams of becoming a doctor. "I've always wanted to help people," she said, her eyes lighting up. "But sometimes, it feels impossible." Thaddeus nodded, feeling a connection forming between them. "You're stronger than you know, and you're not alone in this." She smiled, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her expression. "Thank you, Thaddeus. This means a lot to me." The night ended with a surprising amount of funds raised, but what mattered more to Thaddeus was the shift in his heart and mind. He realized that empathy was a powerful force, one that he had overlooked for far too long. As he walked Amara to her car, he felt lighter. "So, what's next for you?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I just want to keep working hard," she replied, determination in her voice. "And maybe, just maybe, this could help my family." Thaddeus smiled, knowing he had not only helped Amara, but also begun to reshape his own understanding of strength and connection. The journey was only beginning, but for the first time, he felt hopeful. Thaddeus Sinclair stood at the edge of the cafeteria, his gaze fixed on Amara Fields. He had been supporting her for weeks now, but the weight of his past actions still loomed over him. Every day, he could feel his friends' eyes on him, questioning his choices. "Why are you wasting your time with her?" they would ask, their voices dripping with disbelief. "She's just a coffee girl," one of them sneered during lunch. "What do you even see in her?" Thaddeus clenched his fists, a mix of anger and determination swirling inside him. "You don't get it," he replied, his voice steady. "Amara is more than that. She's smart and hardworking." "But she doesn't belong in our world," another friend shot back, crossing his arms. "You're risking everything for someone like her." The whispers and doubts only made Thaddeus more resolute. He had once thrived in this toxic environment, but now it felt suffocating. He turned his back on his friends and walked over to Amara, who was busy serving coffee. Her hair was tied back, and she wore a focused expression as she poured a cup for a customer. "Hey, Amara," Thaddeus said, his voice gentle but firm. She looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. "What do you want, Thaddeus?" she asked, her tone guarded. "I just wanted to see how you're doing," he replied, trying to sound casual. Amara raised an eyebrow. "Is this a joke? Are you just here to show off to your friends?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "I mean it. I've been thinking about everything. I want to support you, not just for show. I want to know you." She hesitated, her expression softening slightly. "Why now? You didn't care before." Thaddeus took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his admission. "I messed up, Amara. I made a cruel joke, and I can't take it back. I want to make it right." To his surprise, Amara's defenses began to lower. "It's not that simple," You don't know what it's like for me. Balancing school and work is hard enough without worrying about people like you." "I want to understand," Thaddeus insisted, his eyes sincere. "Tell me about your dreams. What do you want to do after school?" Amara looked away for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I want to be a doctor, but with my family's situation, it feels impossible. I have to work to help them, and school is so demanding." Thaddeus listened intently, feeling a new sense of respect for her. "You're stronger than you realize. I can help you, Amara. I can help you with your studies, or anything else you need." She studied him carefully, as if trying to determine if he was serious. "Why would you do that? What's in it for you?" "Nothing," he said, his voice unwavering. "I just want to make a difference. I want to be better." Amara finally smiled, a small, hesitant smile that lit up her face. "If you really mean that, then I could use a study partner. I have a huge exam coming up." "I'd love that," Thaddeus replied, feeling a warmth spread through him. As their connection began to deepen, Thaddeus faced more backlash from his friends. "You're losing your edge, Thaddeus. You're becoming one of them," one of his friends critiqued, shaking his head disapprovingly. "I'm becoming a better person," Thaddeus countered, his voice rising slightly. "And maybe you should try it too." Days turned into weeks, and Thaddeus and Amara spent more time together. They studied late into the night, sharing laughter and stories, slowly breaking down the walls they had both built. One evening, as they sat at a table piled high with textbooks and notes, Amara looked up. "You know, I never thought someone like you would care about someone like me." Thaddeus smiled softly. "I'm learning that everyone has a story worth hearing. You've taught me that." In that moment, both felt a shift within themselves. They were no longer defined by their pasts. They were building something new, something real. The connection they shared began to reshape their understanding of strength, vulnerability, and the true meaning of friendship. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement as the annual school gala approached. Students dressed in their finest clothes, laughter and chatter filled the hallways. Thaddeus Sinclair stood at the entrance of the gymnasium, his heart racing with anticipation and anxiety. This year, he wanted to make a real difference, not just for himself, but for Amara Fields and her family. The memory of his cruel joke lingered in his mind, a constant reminder of how far he had come and how much more he needed to grow. "Hey Thad, you ready for tonight?" one of his friends called out, slapping him on the back. "We're going to have a blast." Thaddeus forced a smile, trying to hide the turmoil inside. "Yeah, sure. Just need to check on a few things first," he replied, glancing towards the entrance where Amara was setting up a booth for the fundraiser. As the event began, Amara looked beautiful, her confidence shining through despite the challenges she faced. Thaddeus felt a swell of admiration as he watched her interact with the guests, her laughter ringing clear in the crowded room. He approached her booth, where she was handing out information about her family's needs. "Amara," he said softly, his voice almost lost in the noise. "You're doing an amazing job here." She looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and skepticism. "Thanks, Thaddeus. I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you'd be with your friends." "I am here for you," he insisted, taking a step closer. "I want to help. This is important to me." She raised an eyebrow, folding her arms. "Important? Or is it just a way to clear your conscience?" Thaddeus felt the sting of her words but stood firm. "I know I messed up. I want to make it right, Amara. I truly do." Amara studied him for a moment. She could see the sincerity in his eyes, but doubt still lingered. "Words don't mean much, Thaddeus. Actions speak louder," he nodded, understanding her hesitation. "Then let me show you. Let's make this fundraiser a success together." As the night wore on, Thaddeus and Amara worked side by side. They laughed and shared stories, slowly breaking down the walls that had kept them apart. Thaddeus felt the warmth of genuine connection replace the coldness of his past arrogance. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted their moment. A group of rowdy students accidentally knocked over a table, sending cups and decorations flying. The chaos spread, and Amara instinctively moved to help clean up. "Stay back, I got this," Thaddeus shouted, rushing towards the mess. He began picking up the scattered items, his heart pounding. "Everyone, help out here!" To his surprise, several students joined him, including some of his friends. "What are you doing, Thad?" one of them asked, bewildered. "This isn't like you." He paused, looking around at the faces filled with confusion. "I'm doing what's right. We need to help Amara, and that's more important than fitting in." As he worked alongside Amara, he could feel the shift in the atmosphere. Students began to see him in a new light, and he felt a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. "Why are you really doing this, Thaddeus?" Amara asked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Because I want to be better," he replied, his voice steady. "I've always been focused on my status and my friends, but now I see what truly matters. People matter." Amara's eyes softened. "You're not the same person I thought you were." "Neither are you," he said with a smile. "You've shown me a different perspective." As the night drew to a close, the fundraiser turned out to be a great success. Amara felt overwhelmed by the support they had received. She turned to Thaddeus, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you for believing in me." Thaddeus met her gaze, sincerity shining in his eyes. "We're in this together, Amara. I'll always be here for you." In that moment, both Thaddeus and Amara realized they had found strength in each other. They had faced their fears and grown from their experiences. True power did not lie in wealth or status, but in the bonds they formed and the empathy they shared. With renewed hope and understanding, they stepped into a future where anything was possible. Share this story if you believe that true connection can transform lives and help us grow beyond our past mistakes. Leave a comment about a time when you took a leap to support someone in need, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one.